श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् नमः श्री शंकरानंद गुरुपादाम्बुजन्मने सविलासमहामोह ग्राहग्रासैककर्मणि. Okay. So in the last class, we have come to describing what exactly is the obstacle that is preventing us from recognizing the true nature, which we seem to be knowing about. The idea is that we are of Jiva, that means Jiva is of the nature of Satchidananda. That is made very clear from that perspective. However, when it comes to recognizing that as our true nature, there seems to be some issues associated with our understanding. And the reason they said, Swamiji mentioned, was that it is similar to a father listening to a group of children chanting, and the voice of many others who are also chanting, it drowns the voice of from recognizing his own child's voice in that group that we are looking at. This is how he describes that there seems to be a similar obstacle in recognizing the nature of the self fully. And that is the reason, although we have unconditional love for the self, which comes out through many of our thinking and working and living, that I don't want to die, I don't want to fall sick, ever want to be happy, never I want to be any unhappiness coming anywhere near me, etc., etc. There are so many things that actually point out to the fact that we love ourselves unconditionally. Only as long as the others are, and others when I mean, it can be persons, it can be objects, only as long as they are giving us the joy, we are in a position to love them. We are okay to love them. Moment they stop giving joy, the love also disappears. And since the love for the self seems to be unconditional and continuous, there is no break in that right from our childhood. It appears that my nature is that of joy. But unfortunately, we are not recognizing that my nature is joy. So in addition to understanding my own nature in a vague manner, I run after the outside objects of the world for giving me a similar joy. Because I know my joy, my nature is joy, but I'm not feeling it. So I think I'm missing something. And in the process, we go outside looking for that particular joy. And since it is not available outside, we always end up with a sort of diminishing return of that joy with each of the object, and we will be looking for replacement from time to time. And the idea of this obstruction, when it came, Swamiji has put across a word called pratibandha. Pratibandha is the obstacle that we are talking. that this pratibandha seems to somehow put a aspect of na asti na bhati. That particular object is not there, neither it is existing. That kind of an obstruction this particular thing is putting, and there are many examples one can give for this particular aspect. Yeah. Um, uh, uh, Suppose we couple of friends go to see what do you call a opera, for example. Yeah, and unfortunately there is a big pillar in front of one of the persons, and covering portion of the opera that he is not able to see. Yeah. So for that particular person, really speaking, portion of the dance that is going on, or the drama that is going on the stage, is continuously closed, not available for experience. So this pillar kind of gives that kind of a obstruction for the person from recognizing the full nature of what is being presented there. Whereas the other friend who is able to see the full stage is able to appreciate much better. And unfortunately or fortunately, if a vital character in the play comes on that particular portion where the friend is not able to watch, for him, that portion is completely left. So he is in a total darkness about what is the total meaning of that particular play. And then, unfortunately, what happens, it doesn't stop with the not recognizing the aspect, but then the projection will start. Maybe what I'm missing is this, and we start developing a story of our own, and not only we miss the truth associated with that, but we start putting stories associated with what is happening. So here, the terms that Swamiji has used was na asti bhati vyavahara yogyatvam. Asti bhati, asti is existence, bhati is I know that particular thing exists. A view without any abstraction will give you a complete asti bhati experience. That means I know it is exists, and I know it exists. Whereas when it comes to people with a little obstruction in front of them, it can be a problem in terms of asti, because that existence itself, we will start doubting it. And in the process of that, we start projecting. I think in the definitions of the Maya, the powers, two powers of Maya, I think we have heard many times from our Swamijis on that. One is called veiling of the Avarana Shakti, and other is projection, which is Vikshepa Shakti. So this Avarana Shakti and Vikshepa Shakti of the Maya is being described in a slightly different terminology by Swamiji here. He says that in case of recognizing our own true nature, one of the major problems associated is our own mental attitudes. So because I'm not able to recognize my nature completely because of the obstruction, which we call it as the veiling or avidya, I am not able to recognize my true nature, and in the process I start projecting the selfhood onto the inert layers of our mind and body, and start telling that I am this body and I am this mind. Yeah, but whereas we know they are inert layers, and I think we have gone through from verse 3 to 10 in a very detailed way, explaining the three experiences that we go through of waking, dream, and deep sleep. Yeah. So here, once we recognize that it is that avidya which is the obstruction, which is not allowing me to see my true nature, otherwise I wouldn't have run after the objects outside. Swamiji will now start describing what this nature of this particular avidya, because we have to know what this avidya is to overcome that. Unless I know the true nature of the avidya, I will not be in a position to overcome that. So here, Swamiji starts describing the true nature of the ignorance or avidya. So verse number 15 we are reading now.
Shankarji, I have to interrupt for a minute, please.
Please, no problem.
I couldn't understand in shloka 9 the meaning of the shloka it has given here in the book. Is
Okay.
that love for others is for the self, but the love that is seen in the self is not for others. Okay, that one is okay. Therefore, that love in the self, again, it is capital. All these selves are capital. Love in the self is supreme. For that reason, the self is of the nature of supreme bliss. So this middle line, therefore that love in the self is supreme, and then for that reason, the self is of the nature of supreme bliss.
Okay. So the logic of those two statements you are not able to get, is it?
Yes. Especially
Okay.
this line, the love that is seen in the self, again, there is this capital self, is not for others. But on the other hand, when we think, or when we come to know ourselves, or in next one, it says that when you love somebody, you love yourself. For yourself.
Okay.
And when you
Got
love
it, got it.
yourself, then you love everybody else.
Okay.
In true sense.
Okay.
I am a little confused.
Sure, sure. Thanks for asking this question. Yeah. There is a beautiful example in Maitreyi Brahmana, in one of the Upanishads actually. The Rishi there actually starts telling that I will take, I am taking sannyasa. He comes and he declares. And his wife, first wife is Maitreyi, and one more was there, Katyayani or somebody. And the second lady accepts that he is taking sannyasa, and she is more interested in asking as to what I will get, how I live, kind of a thing, more mundane in terms of that. But the first wife start questioning Yajnavalkya. Yajnavalkya is Brihadaranyaka Upanishad we are talking about. Yeah. So Yajnavalkya, then she asked a question as to, if you are taking this particular sannyasa, why are you doing it? Is it that we are not loving you enough? I am loving you so much. There are children who are loving you so much. Other wives are there who are loving you so much. Why are you taking this sannyasa when so much love is being given to you? At that time, the dialogue between Yajnavalkya and the wife, that became a famous thing in terms of explaining what we are seeing here. He says that any love that you are seeing for yourself is showing for the others is not really a love for others, but it is a love for yourself. See, if I am loving somebody, that it means that I am not really loving purely for the sake of others, but I am loving for myself. Because that particular person is giving me happiness, I am loving. So whenever there is a happiness reduction that happens, you stop loving. Maybe he is indicating fact that the second wife already started moving away from him. The moment he said, I am sannyasa, I am taking sannyasa, she already decided that he is no longer useful to me and started moving away. That is a kind of an example that is being said here. Whether really he is married twice and we don't know all that. Yeah. The idea is that he is trying to indicate to that Maitreyi, telling that all the love that we show for others is really a love that we show for ourselves. We love everybody only for our sake, not for others. So he says that Tat Paramam, that self-love for the Supreme, na ayam anyartham, is not for the others, but Atmani, the love seen in the self. So whatever love you are showing for others is only love that you show for yourself ultimately. And here a very important connection is being made, that the more I love something or somebody, that means more happiness is associated with that particular object or the person. Only when happiness is there, the love will increase. So here he is telling the love for the self is so supreme that my love for myself is unconditional. Irrespective of how I am, I may recognize, I may realize if I analyze that I am not a great person, I am not this, I am not that, I can compare, become jealous. So many things can happen, but still, knowing all the deficiencies, I cannot stop loving myself.
Yes.
So he says, love for myself is unconditional, it is supreme. And if I am loving something so much, that must be of nature of bliss or the happiness. So the link between love and happiness is the proof that my nature is of happiness. That the entire crux of the argument to prove that Jiva's nature is happiness is this.
Okay. 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 Second thing which you said today is that about
Mhm.
veiling the knowledge and projecting. Is this veiling the same thing like when you said the result of that veiling is misinterpretation, misunderstanding, misapprehension? It comes in so many times in Vivek Chudamani.
Yeah. No, veiling is non-apprehension.
Oh, non-apprehension. Okay. Okay.
Misapprehension is the result of that non-apprehension. So the veiling is the non-apprehension. Misapprehension is projection of untruth as the truth.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
No problem. Okay. So verse 15 we will start with today. Chidanandamaya Brahma Pratibimba Samanvita Tamo Rajas Sattva Gunaha Prakritir Dvividha Chidanandamaya Brahma Pratibimba Samanvita Tamo Rajas Sattva Gunaha Prakritir Dvividha. So it's a very simple verse in terms of the language that is being used here. Yeah, very easy to understand this one. No real difficult words that are used. So Chidananda Maya Brahma. So Chit Ananda is the reflection of that Brahman. Yeah, reflection of Brahman with the nature of the existence, consciousness. Chit Ananda Maya Brahma. Maya is full of. So that Brahman is full of what? Chidananda. Chit automatically includes the Sat as we call that. Yeah. So Satchidananda is the one which we are really looking at here. So existence, consciousness, bliss is the nature of that reflection of that Brahman. That is Samanvita, endowed with the reflected consciousness. That Tamo Rajas Sattva Gunaha is the nature of that Sattva, Rajas and Tamas are part of this particular Brahman that we are looking at. And Prakriti, that the term that is being introduced here, Dvividha Chasa, means it is of twofold nature. That particular Prakriti is of twofold nature. We will look at each of this as to what they mean. Yeah. So Prakriti or primordial substance is being introduced here. Yeah. So here, what is being told is we are now looking at the nature of that avidya, and in order to understand avidya, he is going one step above and trying to describe to us as to what this veiling at different levels is. Yeah. Obviously, when we talk about jiva, we are talking about only at an individual level. All of us, we are looking at the individual level, and at the individual level, vyashti level in Sanskrit terms, at vyashti level, I am an individual and I have got a veiling at my level. But at a universal level, a totality level or samashti level also, there will be a veiling associated with the nature of the truth that we need to understand, that Brahman. We'll go through that immediately after this one. Yeah. So in order to understand, he is taking one step above, and he is now proposing that there is something called a Prakriti. So in Sankhya philosophy, actually we have this term Prakriti, which Swamiji is using here. Swami Vidyanandaji is using the term Prakriti. Adi Shankaracharya actually uses the term of not Prakriti, but Pramoda. So he used a different terminology, but really speaking, people are more used to Prakriti because Sankhya philosophy uses Purusha and Prakriti. And Shankaracharya uses the Purusha and Pradhana. But it really doesn't matter. They mean more or less the same. Yeah. So Prakriti is something which is creating this entire universe, and we can call that in Advaita terms the entire Mithya Prapancha. The illusory world, entire Vyavaharika world is being created, and he is giving that term of Prakriti here. We will go through this, slightly different from what we hear from our Swamijis in the class. I will tell you that difference also, so that we are all clear. Yeah? So this Prakriti is in a seed form. It says that it is in a seed form, and it is composed of three gunas: Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And the entity which is there means as a reflection of that Brahman is that pure consciousness and the bliss, and this Prakriti is of two kinds, he is telling. Yeah. So let us see as to what he is trying to say here. Yeah. Normally, when we talk about Maya, we say that the Maya is of Trigunatmika. This is a term which we must have heard many times while we heard Swamiji's telling, whether it is Bhagavad Gita, when we go through this Trigunatmika Guna, Maya is described as Trigunatmika. Here, slightly different approach. He is talking about Prakriti being of three different gunas. So the Sattva, Rajo, Tamo gunas is what this Prakriti is made up of. That is what is the difference that normally we see. Yeah? But it's one and the same. We will go through this a bit more. Maybe he's trying to establish two things separated out, and that is the reason why this is being introduced here as the Prakriti here. Yeah. Prakriti, the term when we talk about Prakriti, yeah, Kriya means actually action, and Kriti means to do. So Kriya is action, and Kriti is to do. So when we talk about Prakriti, means it is being done in a very, very elaborate way. Means what? There are so much divisions associated with the so-called Prakriti getting created, and what is getting created in a multiple dimensions is what is referred to as the universe or Prakriti. That is how the term etymological meaning of Prakriti is that. Yeah, pra and kriti. Kriti is to do, and to do how? In a very elaborate way. That means there is a huge differences in the universe that we are experience in this world. Yeah. And once we analyze this particular Prakriti, how do we analyze? We analyze the Prakriti that is we are experiencing as a Jiva. So the entire creation, when we analyze, he says that there are this Prakriti appears to be made up of three gunas called Sattva Guna, Rajo Guna, and Tamo Guna. So this is what Trigunatmika is, not Maya, but Prakriti is Trigunatmika as per this particular book. Yeah. Now we normally have two ways of looking at whenever we say that something has got three things. Either they can be characteristics or they can be constituents. Means if I say, for example, house has got 4 bedrooms and it has got green color, yeah, and it is of 2 floors, etc., etc. The house has got these constituents that make up. It has got 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, this, that. And similarly, there a tree, for example, it has got 5 branches, 10,000 leaves, and so many roots, so many flowers, so many fruits. All of them become kind of a constituents of that particular one thing, we call that as tree. So here, when we say that Prakriti has got Sattva, Rajas, Tamoguna, are they constituents that we are referring to, or they can be characteristics? I can say that I am a man, I am 5 feet 5 inches high, I am of this particular width, I am this particular height, I am this particular this one. I can say, describe myself in terms of my characteristics. So is Sattva, Rajas, Tamoguna in terms of Prakriti, can we describe them as constituents? Then question comes is, no, they are not really constituents, because we cannot, if for example, if a tree has got 5 branches, I can chop off 2 and it will be left with only 3. So this is not a constituent of Prakriti where I can separate them out or take them out. And similarly, they cannot be described even as a characteristics. Then how can we describe this Sattva, Rajas, Tamo gunas of Prakriti? They say it is like an inherent quality. You can call that as at the best as inherent quality, like heat to the fire. So you cannot separate that out. You cannot even call heat as the characteristic of fire, because without heat, nothing is there. Fire itself is not there. Like that, this Sattva, Rajo, Tamo gunas, without that, the Prakriti itself is not there. But somehow these three seem to be, it is like a huge canvas that is there, you can imagine, and these 3 paints are there everywhere. So that is how we can really look at that these 3 are neither as the constituents nor as the qualities. Although we are telling them that Prakriti is made up of, these are the terms we use, yeah. So please be aware that really they are neither constituents nor the qualities. They actually constitute the very Prakriti that we are trying to describe, only from the aspect of our own understanding that Prakriti. Because I cannot directly use my senses to describe Prakriti, I am trying to do that based on my experience with this world. Yeah, very important from that perspective. That the Sattva-rajo Tamo gunas, they are neither characters nor constituents. They are the very nature of that particular thing, what we call as Prakriti. So, but one difference between Sankhya philosophy, because we are using the term of Prakriti in Sankhya, the Prakriti in the very presence of Purusha somehow expands into this universe. So the Prakriti and Purusha is the intelligent aspect, consciousness aspect, awareness aspect. They need not get in touch with each other. The example they give is the very presence of the sun, the pond and the water can get evaporated. So the sun is not doing any specific work, no action being done, but in the very presence, the changes take place in the earth. This is how the experience, the Sankhya philosophers tell or explain these 2 terms. Yeah, but Shankaracharya is very clear that the Prakriti by itself, whether you call it Prakriti, whether you call it Maya, anything, it cannot do itself anything unless there is interaction between these 2. And the interaction in what way? It is in the terms of reflected consciousness. Chit Chaya, you must have heard about Chit Chaya before. Chit is the consciousness, Chaya is the shadow, but shadow means reflection. So somehow this Prakriti seems to be having a nature of reflecting this pure consciousness. Somehow or the other, there seems to be a nature of this Prakriti wherein the Brahman or the pure consciousness is leaving a reflection. Because of that reflection, Prakriti is able to act the way it is acting. Yeah? Very important difference. If you want to, because these terminologies and these logic, we do hear even now from time to time. This example what I gave, the sun is there and the sun is not doing any action, and despite that the energy is there on the earth, and the entire creation on the earth is happening only because of this energy that we are getting from the sun. All that is correct, yeah, no doubt about that. But what we need to understand is those examples that are being given is for different purpose. But for us to understand the very nature of this Prakriti and Purusha, Advaita is very clear. A reflected consciousness on the inert layers is a must. And for a Jiva, somehow this Prakriti is having that ability to reflect that consciousness. This is like, if suppose there is a mountain with full of rocks, yeah, and there is a sun which is there, some of the rocks where where the nature is very shiny and bright is because they are able to reflect this particular sunlight. Other rocks that are there, you don't find this kind of a shine that is coming out of this. It is the nature of that particular rock which is there is able to reflect the sunlight. And others, they are not able to reflect the sunlight in the same way. Similarly, wherever the consciousness is there everywhere, however, those places where the Prakriti is of specific nature, this reflection manifests much higher, much clearer. That is how the example must be taken. Yeah. So it's very important that a reflected consciousness, Chitchaya, is very important from Advaita perspective for this Prakriti to work. And he says this Prakriti is of two types, Vividha Chasa. Yeah. So it's of two types. We will see what that is in the next verse. He starts describing this Prakriti a bit more. Okay. Verse number 16, we will go into. Yeah. Sattva Shuddha Vishuddhibhyam Maya Vidye Te Mate Maya Bimbo Vashikritya Tam Syat Sarvajna Ishvaraha. Sattva Shuddha Vishuddhibhyam Maya Vidye Te Mate Maya Bimbo Vashikritya Tam Syat Sarvajna Ishvaraha. So here the concept of Ishvara is being introduced here. Yeah? We have Sattva Shuddha. Sattva Shuddha means predominantly pure Sattva Guna. So we have seen in Prakriti, there are three are there. Sattva Guna, Rajo Guna and Tamo Guna. So wherever the Sattva Guna is predominant, so you can say these are the three colors on that canvas which are there. For example, wherever the white color is more, that is where predominantly white. It doesn't say pure white. Pure means it is not, there is no Rajoguna, there is no Tamoguna. There is no such place because every bit of this Prakriti is completely filled with these three gunas. However, it appears that when the creation happens, somehow these three gunas will lose the balance in terms of their constituents. They tend to mix up together. And when the mixing actually is taking place, wherever Sattva Guna is predominant, means very little Rajoguna, very little of Tamoguna, that particular place is Sattva Guna Avishuddhibhyam. And wherever there is a impurity coming in, impurity with Sattva is what? Only three are there. Yeah. One is Sattva, other two are Rajoguna and Tamoguna. So impure Sattva Guna means where the Rajoguna get mixed up more and Tamoguna get mixed up more. At that particular instance, Maya Avidye Te Matehe. So wherever the consciousness is reflecting in the predominantly pure Shuddha, that pure Shuddha is being referred to as Maya. And the impure Suddha, that means where the Rajoguna and Tamoguna get mixed up of that Prakriti, that particular thing is being referred to as Avidya. See, that normally we see this Avidya only with respect to individual Jiva. Swamiji is now painting a bigger picture. He says Prakriti has got three gunas of Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Wherever pure Sattva is there, that portion of Prakriti is the Maya. And wherever there is a mix-up of Rajoguna and Sattva Guna, that portion of Prakriti is referred to as Avidya. Yeah. And remember that Maya Bimba, that reflection of the consciousness in the Maya. In Maya, wherever that consciousness is getting reflected, means Shuddha Sattva, it is getting reflected. Syat Vashikritya means that is where the Sarvajnaha Ishvaraha, that omniscient and Ishvara who is there, that Ishvara is getting reflected when the consciousness is getting reflected in the pure Sattva Guna. And that pure Sattva Guna is being talked about as Maya here. See, slightly different from the definitions what we have seen before in other texts, where Maya itself is described as Trigunatmika. Here he is telling where the Shuddha Sattva Guna is more of this Prakriti is referred to as Maya, and Brahman when gets reflected, because pure consciousness has to get reflected, the resultant entity is the Sarvajnaha Ishvara. The omniscient, all-knowing Ishvara is nothing but a reflected consciousness in pure Sattva Guna. So really speaking, that definition of Ishvara is not changing, because even when we say Maya is the one, we still say that predominantly Sattva Guna where Brahman gets reflected is Ishvara. Here he is defining that Sattva Guna itself as the Maya. Slight difference from that perspective. Keep that in mind. Really it doesn't matter, but for us to understand next few verses, it's important we recognize this variation, because we are used to a different explanation in other texts. All right. And where the Rajas and Tamas is more, that is where the Avidya is being termed as. So where the Prakriti itself has got Sattva, and where Avidya comes into picture is when that Rajoguna is more, where the Sattva Guna gets mixed up. Malina Sattva, it is called Malina Sattva. So still that Sattva Guna is there, but it is now contaminated by Rajoguna and Tamoguna, and that Rajoguna, predominantly Rajoguna, if it happens, that is where the Avidya portion comes in. Now, what is the difference between Maya and Avidya and the reflection associated with this is, he says here, if you see one very important term, Maya Bimbo Vashikritya, Tam Syat Sarvajna Ishvara, means because this Maya is made up of pure Sattva Guna. Sattva Guna is knowledge oriented, yeah, and Rajoguna is action oriented. Tamoguna is lethargy associated with that. I think that is very clear to all of us, because this is what we have been studying for many years now. So this Sattva Guna is the Maya that we are talking about, is knowledge oriented, and because Ishvara is the reflection of the consciousness through this Sattva Guna, that particular Ishvara is all knowing, in the sense what? He is under complete control. He is having complete control over that Maya. So he becomes what? Mayapati. So here, Maya Bimba Syat Vashikritya. He remains on complete control over that Maya, means what? That Sattva Guna associated with that. Although he is part of the creation. So even Ishvara is a mithya, is a part of the reflection that we are talking about, part of the creation. However, that Ishvara is under complete control over the over this Maya or the Sattva Guna Pradhana Prakriti. He is also a reflected consciousness only. However, he knows completely the true nature of Ishvara, true nature of the Brahma, and the Ishvara is under control. He is having complete control over the Maya aspect of that. All right. Let me stop here. Any questions, any confusions?
Shankarji, I have a question. So
Mhm.
when we're talking about the sattva guna, so this is why they call that sattva gunas are bondage too.
Sattva gunas are?
Sattva gunas are bond. They also bond. They also bound you because it's still
Uh-huh.
pure, but it's still the reflect the Maya. It's still the Maya.
Correct. At a avidya level, we will come to that in the next verse, Sumanji. But in this particular case, in this verse, we are only talking about Ishvara. So
Okay.
Ishvara, although he is from Sattva-guna, but because he is predominantly Sattva-guna, he doesn't have any bondage. He knows exactly what the true nature of Brahman is and what is his role as Ishvara, as a all-knowing Ishvara. So the word that Swamiji has used here is Sarvajna Ishvara. That is the reason why he says that Ishvara that gets created because of reflection through Sattva-guna is Sarvajna Ishvara. He is all-knowing. There is no doubt about him. There is no bondage as far as Ishvara is concerned.
Yeah, but for us, the sattva guna is still a bondage.
Sure, sure. We will come to that in the next verse.
Okay.
Next verse, we will explain that. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes,
Shankarji,
okay, go ahead, Lata.
go ahead, Moini.
When we say that Ishvara, do we put those Rama, Shiva, and Krishna in that category?
You can put, even including your own guru and yourself if required to do so. No difference between you and Ishvara to start with. Yeah. But you are right.
Yeah.
The Ishvara can be a Saguna or Nirguna. It can be both. So if you want a form associated with this Ishvara, and that's why we pray to this particular name and form, whether it is Rama, Krishna, or Vishnu, or Shiva. For example, in Veda period, there is no Rama, no Krishna. Rama, Krishna came very much later in our this one. Yeah, at that time, Indra was there. The Trimurtis were there right from start, Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva or Rudra. Those people were there. All these form part of that Ishvara. And the names forms that we are giving is more to understand certain responsibilities in maintaining this particular creation and withdrawing, creation, maintenance, and withdrawal. We tend to give certain names, but as we move forward to a more recent days, we added. The latest one, I think, in many of the South Indian temples you find is Satya Sai Baba. It really doesn't matter. Some people say, no, he cannot be because he was not mentioned anywhere. But that way, if we see, even Ramakrishna were not mentioned in our Vedas. Yeah. So it's okay. As I'm telling, even Chinmayananda, for example, for me is a Ishvara. So it doesn't matter whether we are giving a name and form. It can be Saguna, it can be Nirguna. But remember, that particular Ishvara is also having a role to play in creation. Role in case of me, Chinmayananda ji may be an Ishvara, but he has got still a role to play for me to cross over. He is the pole vault pole who is taking me over, helping me to cross over.
So that perhaps has a connection with, like you said, I am also Brahman, but I am only a reflected consciousness. Once I realize that I am only reflected consciousness,
Correct.
then I am equal to whatever, Brahman or whatever.
And three different levels are there in this reflected consciousness. Yeah. Again, we will come to that in the next verse. But generally, it can be a jiva. So jiva means at an individual level, I am a reflected consciousness. And as that reflected consciousness, the I-ness remains with me. In my mind, in my intellect, I am I. I normally, Gurudev used to call it as small I. Yeah. And there is a capital I, which is either can be Ishvara or Brahman. Because moment for you, Ishvara is easier because I can give a name, I can give a form, and I can do my meditation on that particular name and form because it makes it easy. But as I go into that, I drop that name and form as well. When in deep meditation, there is no Rama, no Krishna, no person with the flute or with the bow and arrow, nothing is there. I drop all that and then I merge with that Nirguna Ishvara. And as I mentioned, moment you become Ishvara, you don't have to worry because Ishvara is complete Sarvajnaha. He doesn't have any problem with recognizing the Brahman. So you also will start recognizing Brahman. The idea is that. For example, Mohiniji, beautiful example again Guruji used to give is the type of this one where you go to sleep. When you go to sleep, you go from the kitchen, when you are there in the kitchen or in the living room, you are mixed up with the samsara. You are either seeing TV, talking to person, this, that, and all. Then I say, okay, I will go and sleep now. So you are cutting off that particular this one, going into meditation. What meditation? Sleep meditation. So you go to your bed and you sleep and you say, okay, and now I want to sleep. I want and sleep. Three things are there in that. So like want to get moksha, I, Ishvara and me. There three are there. But once I sleep on the bed, as long as I is there, as long as want is there is no sleep. Slowly, the I want will dissolve, then I will dissolve. What is left is only sleep. Sleep is a state where this I is not there, want is not there. Similarly, moksha is a place where neither you are there or Ishvara is there, your want of moksha is there, nothing is there. Only the Ishvara is there and you recognize that that Ishvara is yourself. Beautiful example Guruji always gives. In many, many lectures I have heard that he gives this example. So similar to that, yeah?
Thank you.
Shankarji, you talked about reflected consciousness. And like for Prakriti, can we say Prakriti is composed of the three gunas?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, what happens is does the Prakriti kind of, I would say, fluctuates because of the three gunas. Your gunas are not constantly the same.
Mm-hmm.
So they change. So would Prakriti also, it would change along with it, or what happens?
As I mentioned, these three are not different from Prakriti.
Oh,
They are
all the
not
same.
constituents
Okay.
of Prakriti.
All right.
They are not qualities of Prakriti. You are talking of Prakriti in different terminology, that's all. Yeah?
Okay.
So individually also you will see that it is changing. Prakriti is changing. And we say that my nature changes. Nature changes with time of the day. Morning,
Yes.
our Sattva-guna is more, Rajoguna increases and slowly Tamoguna takes over by the end of the day, etc. So we see the Prakriti changes. You are absolutely right there.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is more from understanding the three gunas. But from the perspective of sadhana, we do say that my mental sattva guna should be of higher quality, quantity through sadhana. If my mind is more rajoguna oriented, I am more action oriented. I need to cut down on that. If my mind is of tamoguna, then it is more lethargy associated with my actions, with my lifestyle. I need to increase the sattva guna. That should not come down and go up again and again. Sadhana, from that perspective, is to increase sattva guna more and more. Okay. Although as a guna, that's why I'm telling gunas are something. The entire Prakriti is universe. So the entire nature is made up of these three. There is nothing that is not there, that where we see these three gunas that they permeate each and every corner. For example, again, if you take liquids, for example, yeah. So the Bowater river or the Bo river's water, for example, or Ganga river, which is there once upon a time, yeah, clear, crystal clear mountain water, let us say, which is there, has got a certain property in terms of liquids. It actually supports you, it makes you live, it allows you to gain knowledge, etc., etc. You can say is more sattvic. Same liquid, if you take a sulfuric acid, it is more caustic. Wherever it goes, it actually takes out the material on which it is falling. So it is more Rajoguna associated, action oriented. It actually is that type of a liquid that is there. And you see that a water in the roadside canal, which is there, full of dirt and other stuff, is more Tamoguna. It doesn't really support anything, doesn't help you in any way, only it allows you to rot. So that type of a evaluation you can do with every object. Metals you take, for example, solids, if you take a diamond or a gold, etc., they appear to be more sattvic by nature because they are crystal clear. The way they maintain themselves is very, very good in terms of this one. Whereas a metal like iron gets corroded, but still action associated with them is there. However, when we talk about a rock, it will stay there for millions of years without any changes unless somebody goes and touches. More tamoguna associated. So like that, we can see these three gunas permeating the entire creation. What we are interested more is how my inner nature is there, how these three gunas are constituting me at an individual level. From sadhana perspective, that is more important for us. But these three gunas are all pervasive and they are no different from Prakriti. When we say Prakriti is all the creation, then these three are part of that all creation. They are the same, no different. All right?
Thank you.
Shankarji,
Yes, Abhinav.
I still don't understand this. Supreme consciousness permeates everything.
I told you that Prakriti permeates everything means Prakriti constitutes the entire creation. However, creation in Advaita, there is not there without a reflected consciousness. So that reflected consciousness permeates everything. So Supreme Brahman permeates in that way. The Prakriti cannot exist without that reflection of the Supreme Consciousness. But you must understand the way we describe Supreme Consciousness is Ajam Nirvikalpam Nirakaram Ekam Niranandamanandam Advaita Purnam. Means that thing directly is not converting into the creation that we are looking at, only a reflection of that. Because if it is Ajam, it cannot be a universe. It never took birth, so to say. Nirvikalpa, there is no change to that particular this one. So from that perspective, if you take Advaita philosophy, the Brahman does not permeate everything directly. It permeates as a reflected consciousness in the entire Prakriti. So Prakriti is all pervading, reflection is all pervading. That way the Brahman is all pervading. Does it make sense? Try to think about that. When we talk Advaita, there is nothing but that truth. Yeah, there is no second. Only that is there. However, somehow this seems to be existing. Purnamidaha, Purnamidam. Purnamadaha, Purnamidam. That also seems to be Purna because it is not converting into anything. But this also is Purna. How? Prakriti is Purna and reflection of that Brahman is Purna. But once we take out the reality associated with this, that Purna is also Purna which is left behind. You minus this Purna from that Purna, it is not like 10 minus 10 is equal to 0. There it is 10 minus 10 is equal to 10. Infinity minus infinity is equal to infinity. That is how we must understand this particular concept a bit more. Try to do some mananam. You are right in telling that. Yeah, I'm not telling you are wrong. Only conceptually, the entire creation is mithya. It's only an illusion. For example, the gold is there, gold that got converted into bangles, chains, etc., etc. So all these chains, bangles, etc., is part of that gold only. Really speaking, there is no bangle chain. There is no reality associated with this. Another way to understand. But this is a bit more. It is like a rope snake example which Shankaracharya gives. Rope is there, snake is there. So there is seems to be a Prakriti which is creating this snake out of that rope. Really, but rope is creating this snake? No, it's not doing anything on its own. But very fact that we are experiencing that snake gives a reality to that. So here we are talking of Prakriti and all is the creation of that snake. Somehow the rope appears to be reflecting in that, because if the rope is of so much size and so many coils, the snake is also of that much size and so many coils. So it is giving us that particular feeling that a snake is getting created with the rope as the substrate. Bit more mananam, Abhinanji.
Thank you.
If you still have this one, please, we will revisit it in the next class. Okay.
Thanks.
So this the Sattva Suddha. Okay. Did we read the verse 16? Prakriti is of two types, and we said Ishvara's definition we have given here. Yeah. Okay. So this Malina Sattva Pradhana, as we mentioned, is Rajo Pradhana Prakriti. That is what actually gives rise to the Avidya. Avidya is the where the contamination of Rajoguna is much more in that Sattva Guna, and that particular thing becomes the Avidya aspect, like Shuddha Sattva, which is Maya, is giving rise to Ishvara. We are now talking of a contaminated Sattva. Malina Sattva, contaminated with Rajas, is the one which gives rise to Jiva, and that particular aspect of Prakriti, where the Rajoguna get mixed up with Sattva-guna in a higher proportion, that is where you get the Jiva associated with that reflection. Same Brahman is reflecting wherever, like I mentioned, the sunlight is there, reflecting, falling on a mountain. Some shiny rocks are there where the reflection is much more. So that becomes the complete pure, this one, when it comes, it becomes Ishvara. Or another example, Vimalanandji gives, and I think it is in chapter 18 of Bhagavad Gita also, is where there is a pure crystal clear lake. The sun reflected in that is crystal clear. No variations, no this ones, absolutely you can see the sun, and it is very, very clear in terms of reflection. So that is Ishvara. Whereas if it is a dirty pond, which is there, means what? There is a mix-up of Rajoguna, mix-up of Tamoguna in that particular lake, then the reflection of that particular sun in that water body is distorted, is not as bright as the Ishvara. So this dirty lake reflection is Jiva, and the pure lake reflection, you can take that as Ishvara. So the lakes are everywhere. So these three gunas are there everywhere, where the clarity is there, where knowledge is there, where the Brahman's reflection in that Prakriti happens, Ishvara gets created. And you may have thousands Ishvaras really getting created, no difference between them. All of them is one Ishvara Tattva that we talk about. But for us, as we talked about, it can reflect as Rama, Krishna, Buddha, this, that, and so many others we can extend. 33,000 gods we can extend in terms of our Ishwaras, in terms of names and forms. But Ishwaratvam, that Tattva which is behind essence, is exactly the same, no variation. However, when it comes to this Avidya, because of the knowledge is not there, that Sarvajnatam is missing, as many dirty lakes are there, as many Jivas are there. Because I don't see that oneness like Ishvara is able to see oneness in all Ishvaras which are there. I am not able to see that oneness. So each of these dirty ponds, reflections, each one is an individual. Jiva is what we will be. And because of that, each of them will have an obstruction. This avidya becomes the obstruction from me recognizing the true nature of the Ishvara, you can say, or Brahman, you can say. One of them. Yeah. So 17th verse, I think we don't have time. We have run out of time today.
Okay,
We
one
will,
more question, Shankarji. So,
can
stupid
I close
one,
the
I
class?
think.
I will take the question, but we'll close the class. I will keep the class open. So people
Okay.
who have other business can go away.
Okay.
Just wait, ma'am.
Okay.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Okay, I'll keep the recording on so that others can listen even if they have to drop. Yeah. Go ahead, Mohiniji.
Okay, there's most of the time we hear this example of snake and rope. Suppose a person hasn't seen snake, so he will not think about rope any snake. So he's
Correct.
okay, he's safe. So, but ignorance of the snake is there. What happens in that situation?
Okay, but we should not extend the example to understand the concept. Yeah,
Okay.
this is something which is very, very clear. If suppose I have not seen the snake, if somebody says, then I will say, okay, don't take this example. Have you seen the sky? Nobody can say I did not see the sky. Yeah.
Right.
So then I will say, what you are seeing, the blueness associated with the sky is only mithya.
Okay.
That is not the truth. That associated one is there, which is that this is only a reflection that we are seeing. Scientific explanation we can give. Others who says that, okay, I did not never got up in the mornings to see, I got up only in the evening, so my sky is always black, let us say, if they say. We can give other examples like Mrigatrishna, that is the desert
Stand.
which is there, where the water associated with that. So examples are only for example to understand the concept. Yeah?
So
So,
that is
so
the
if
difference between you
illusion,
and me.
illusion will always remain. Yeah,
Okay.
illusion is always remain. Examples are for understanding that illusion.
Okay, thank you. I have read all these, but anyway, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Any other question, or can we close the class?
So, Shankarji, when Tamoguna is in high, so we haven't reached that point as yet, right?
We haven't even reached the Rajoguna, which is in 17. 18th verse will be, I think, Tamoguna. There we will see that. Hopefully next class we'll cover these two gunas.
Yeah.
And one thing I was thinking, like when we talked about the love and the in the earlier verse that
Mhm.
Mohini had the question on. Now,
Love and bliss.
yeah, love, isn't that supposed to be like an attachment?
It is an attachment, and he says that yourself being attached to yourself is something good if you can extend it beyond the small I. Otherwise, you are already associated yourself, you are attached to yourself, and that is the reason why you look around for the happiness to that I that we feel at our mental level. You are absolutely right there.
Thank you. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Okay, we'll stop the recording and then close the class. Thank you.